This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
Hi, everybody. Let me begin with a story. I want to remove the fog from my brain because I've just come back from the US and suffering from jet lag. And an out-of-box thinking is very good. Many thousands of years ago, in a small Italian town, a merchant had the misfortune of owing a large sum of money to the moneylender. It happens. The moneylender, who was old, ugly, fancied the merchant's beautiful daughter. So he proposed a bargain. Well, he would. He said he would forego the merchant's debt if he could marry the daughter. Both the merchant and the daughter were aghast, horrified by the proposal. She wouldn't marry that old, ugly moneylender for all the tea in China. The moneylender then told them that he would put a black pebble and a white pebble into an empty bag, and the girl would have to pick one pebble from the bag. If she picked the black pebble, then she would become the moneylender's wife, and her father's debt would be forgiven. If she picked the white pebble, then she need not marry him, and her father's debt would still be forgiven. So he was large-hearted, was he? But if she refused to pick a pebble, her father would be thrown in jail. Now, they didn't have a choice. They were standing on a pebble-strewn path in the merchant's garden. And as they talked, the moneylender bent over to pick up two pebbles. Now, as he picked them up, the sharp-eyed girl, the merchant's daughter, she noticed that the moneylender had picked up two black pebbles and put them into the bag. Aha, she thought. He then asked the girl to pick her pebble from the bag. What would you have done if you were the girl? Careful analysis would produce three possibilities. The girl should refuse to take a pebble. The girl should show that there were two black pebbles in the bag and expose the moneylender as a cheat. The third option would be she should pick a black pebble and sacrifice herself in order to save her father from the debt and from imprisonment. The above story, the story that I've told you, is used with the hope that it will make us appreciate the difference between lateral and logical thinking. The girl put her hand into the money bag and drew out a pebble, and without looking at it, she fumbled and let it fall into the pebble-strewn path, where it immediately became lost among all the other pebbles. Oh, how clumsy of me. Excuse me, I've been just out of sorts today, said the girl. Never mind. She turned to the moneylender and said, if you look into the bag for the one that is left, you'll be able to tell which pebble I picked. Since the remaining pebble is black, it must be assumed that she had picked the white one. And since the moneylender dared not admit to his dishonesty, the girl changed what seemed an impossible situation into an advantageous one. Most complex problems, my friends, do have a solution. Sometimes we have to think about them in a different way. And this is called out-of-box thinking. Well, welcome to Storytellers Cafe. I'm your host, Usha Venkatraman, and it is a pleasure for me to host Storytellers Cafe, the number one storytelling broadcast show on Bharat FM. which is a Cincinnati based radio station set up in the year 2020, right at the start of the pandemic. Storytellers Cafe has completed 2 years, and I thank all you listeners who make this commitment every week, every other week, to listen, learn, and enjoy. Thank you for listening to Storytellers Cafe. My guest tonight is someone special. She is special because I've admired her recent performance. We had a show, and she told a wonderful story about Bhaskaracharya and Leelavati, a complex math problem. I love math stories, science stories, and simply took my breath away. And she was already in my list to be invited to Storytellers Cafe, but I couldn't wait. So I decided to bring her on, and you will meet Mangalam Senthil, my guest tonight on Storytellers Cafe. Mangalam is an IT professional turned into a performance professional storyteller. She strongly believes that everyone, everywhere, is telling stories all the time, and that a world of possibilities opens with stories. Yes, doorways open with stories. She is known for how she brings the characters to life in her performance. She's a story enthusiast, a Tedx speaker, a Kolam fanatic, and tells stories under the name of KathaKuteeram. She strongly believes that stories can not only educate and entertain, but can also heal, motivate, and do wonders to the mind and soul. Mangalam is a storyteller at a school and a member of Feast. She has performed in some of the Indian storytelling festivals and at the National Storytelling Network Festival in the United States and at ASST international platforms. Her shadow puppetry at the Feast Fest last year was very well received. She has performed in many government schools, orphanages, and temples. During the pandemic, Mangalam reached out to children in the United States and Australia too. She has done stories in English, Hindi, Tamil, Malayalam, and occasionally in Sanskrit. She loves folk tales and mythology and family stories. Along with her friend Usha, my namesake, she's enabling the wisdom in the Avai, Nalvari, Padaigal. Reach everyone through stories. She was chosen by the District Institute of Education and Training, Tamil Nadu, to introduce concepts of math and science through stories. An engineer by education, a trainer by passion, and a storyteller and story listener from heart. Without further ado, my friends, let me bring Mangalam Senthil onto the studios tonight. Welcome to Storytellers Cafe, Mangalam.
Thank you very much, Usha. Thank you for that beautiful introduction and for that wonderful story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. This month in Kerala is celebrated as the Ramayana month. So I'd like to start off with a small story from the Ramayana, which is very, very close to my heart. Now, Rama and Lakshmana walked swiftly towards the hermitage. Rama's heart was already beating very, very fast. He knew it was not nice when he met Lakshmana halfway, when he went chasing the golden deer. And when they reached the hermitage, their worst fears had come true. Sita was not there. They searched for Sita all around the hermitage, but Sita was nowhere to be seen. Now, Rama was in deep grief. He walked around, he asked every other tree, every branch, every leaf, every bird. He asked the mango tree. He asked the gigantic sal trees. He asked the jackfruit tree. He asked everything that he saw around if they had seen his beloved Sita. Sita was nowhere there. Rama went around frantically searching for Sita. He had got into crippling grief. Where could he go? I was not so sad, or I did not feel when I left the kingdom of Ayodhya and I came here, but here without Sita. It is terrible for me, he told Lakshmana. They went around searching. Rama was in great grief. After a while, his grief turned into anger. He felt irritated. He felt anger towards whatever was happening around him. He crushed the innocent creatures under his feet. He barged forward, not knowing what to do. And Lakshmana just could not believe what he saw in front of his eyes. He confronted Rama and he said, Adrishtva Purvam. Adrishta Purvam, I have never seen my dear beloved brother Rama like this before. Nara Shardula, Nara Sreshta, you are the greatest among men. You are so gentle, restrained, and you think about others' welfare. Now what has happened to you, my dear Rama? Ekasya na paradena lokan hantum tum harhasi. Because of one person's mistake, you are now out charging and destroying the entire world and not thinking about others. This is not the brother whom I knew. My dear Rama, please come back to your senses. I know it's very difficult when my dear sister-in-law Sita is not there around. You shouldn't be like this. You should think with a clear mind for a moment. Please keep aside your sorrow and your anger and think as to what we can do. And my dear beloved Rama, are you thinking, who am I to tell you all this? Or how I knew of all this? It is you yourself who has told me all this when I lost control of myself, when you were asked to leave and the palace and go to the forest. Having heard Lakshmana's words, Rama came back to his senses. And Lakshmana assured, we will search the mountains, the oceans, and all the worlds, and we will definitely find your beloved Sita. And they proceeded further, and they did meet the injured Jatayu, who told that he had tried his level best to fight against the demon king Ravana, whom he saw carrying away Sita. Now he was in a pool of blood, and he said, I tried my level best to stop Ravana, but at a point it was his powerful arrows, spears, and swords against my beak, wings, and talons, and I could take it no more. I could not stop him. He has carried Sita in the southward direction. And saying that, Jatayu vomited blood and he passed away on Rama's lap. Rama and Lakshmana did the last rites for their father-like figure, and they proceeded towards the Krauncha forest. As they were entering the dark forest, they were stopped by something they didn't realize. Something stood in front of them as huge as a mountain. Was it a mountain in their way? As dark as a rain cloud? But it looked very grotesque. It had one eye in its, was it its stomach or chest? It was a headless torso, but its arms were very, very long. Each of its arms were 8 yojanas in length. And they held Rama and Lakshmana and they bound as if it was a rope. The two princes tried their level best to release themselves from the clutches of the headless torso or Kabanda. Tried as much as they could, but they could not. His arms were indeed very, very strong and powerful. Now, Lakshmana told his dear brother Rama, Rama, my dear brother, I will become the food for this demon. You try and rescue yourself, and you please go and find Sita. The two brothers realized that the strength of Kabanda was in his arms. They drew out their powerful swords and slash, slash. They chopped off his arms. The demon roared in pain, and the entire forest reverberated with his cry, and the birds and the animals ran helter-skelter. Now, after his arms were being cut off, the demon, with his mouth in his torso and eye near his chest, spoke to Rama and Lakshmana. You both must indeed be very powerful people. You who have cut my arms, could you please tell me who you are? And Lakshmana went on to introduce himself and his dear brother Rama, and he told their story till then. Kabanda then said, Throw my body into the fire and I shall help you. Rama and Lakshmana, with great difficulty, dragged that huge person or piece of body into a pit, and they put logs of wood and they lit a fire. And Kabanda's body melted, and from that came the most handsome person they had ever seen. And Kabanda said, My pranams to you both, Rama and Lakshmana. I used to be a celestial Gandharva, and my name is Vishwavasu. Drunk with pride of my beauty and youth, I roamed all the worlds, and I irritated the sages too. A sage cursed me to get a very gory form. I had turned into a demon, but even then, I was not bothered. I went around troubling people, and after a while, I did a penance to Lord Brahma, and I attained the boon of immortality from him, of rather a very, 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 very long life. After I got that boon, I thought I was now strong enough and worthy enough to challenge even Indra and sit where he was sitting. And so I went and attacked Indra himself. And you know what Indra did? With his strong Vajrayuda, he gave me one hit. That weapon being so powerful, my head went into my torso and my thighs also came into my body. See my legs. That is why they were hardly visible to you when you saw me. I realized what a grave mistake I had done. I told Indra, please, 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 I'm very sorry. Please do something so that I can stay alive. And that is when he gave me that one eye on my chest and that one big mouth on my tummy. And to catch my prey, he extended my arms long enough so that I can catch hold of anything and eat. And Indra then added, in the Treta Yuga, Rama and Lakshmana would come and they would make you free from the curse. At that time, do tell them the following, and that's what I'm telling you, Rama and Lakshmana. Please proceed westwards and reach the Pampa lake in the Matanga forest. Also, meet Shabari there, and from there, go towards the Rishyamukha hill, where the monkey king Sugriva is there along with his ministers. He is being driven out from the kingdom by his brother Vali. He is the person who will help you find your dear wife Sita. Saying that, Vishwavasu ascended the chariot that had come from the heavens, and he went up. Now, this story is very close to me, or rather, I like this story very much when my mother told this to me, because it was a situation when Rama and Lakshmana had absolutely no clue what had happened to Sita. So I draw parallels with that in my life too. Sometimes I absolutely have no clue what to do, or something which I expected didn't turn out the way it was. I used to get very irritated, very frustrated. Even the thing which I used to like before, I used to get irritated seeing that. So that is when I remember what Lakshmana told Rama. Even the things which we like, even the things which were very dear to us, we do not like to see them. When we see them, or when our brain and mind is clogged by emotions. So, to keep aside the emotions will help us think clearly. Even in the Avvai Nalvari Padalgal, which the great Sangam era poet Avvai Patti wrote, she says, keep aside your emotions and then think. And then you start working from where you are, expressing gratitude to what you already have. So that song number 38 is so beautiful, and I really love that song. And I see a parallel to that in Ramayana too. So not yet reached there, but definitely trying. It's so human. Even Valmiki says to be emotional is a trait which says you are a human being. But when you fall down, how quick are you to get up, keeping your emotions aside? And how clear can you think and then proceed forward? So, this is a story which I carry very close to my heart because it has helped me actually sail through very difficult times in my life. And this being the Ramayana month, I wanted to share the story with you all today.
Thank you, Mangalam. What a wonderful story, and how well you expressed the connection with your life and with Avayar's Padalgal, her poems, and drew parallel. I have actually never heard this Kabanda story, and thank you for regaling us and sharing this nugget. From the Ramayana. Ramayana, the epic, has so many stories within stories, and it's wonderful to unravel, peel the layers, and listen to this story about Karbanda. Thank you, Kabanda. Thank you so much for sharing this story, and beautifully expressed, and beautifully you drew the analogy. And this also connects the out of box thinking. If the merchant's daughter had been too emotional, she wouldn't have had the clarity to come up with a solution. So
Very true.
sometimes when you are faced with a difficult situation, I think you should put your emotions aside, think clearly, look at the problem in hand objectively, and you will get a solution. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mangalam, for sharing this wonderful story. Once again, welcome to Storytellers Cafe. For all those who tuned in late, my guest tonight is Mangalam Senthil, and I'm your host, Usha Venkatraman. You're watching Storytellers Cafe. So, Mangalam, with that wonderful story that you set the stage on fire, we would like to know your journey. What's your story? You're an IT professional, and how did you become a successful storyteller, a TEDx speaker? And I know that the southern part of India has many, many wonderful storytellers who are all engineering students with an engineering qualification as a background, have turned into such successful storytellers. How did this transformation happen?
Okay, so as everyone, I finished my 12th, did my engineering, got into a company I was campus recruited into a big IT company, and I was dealing with network elements. I was into telecom projects. I was thoroughly enjoying my job. And that is when I did a 6 months behavioral school program. When I did that program, I really liked all the sessions and the presentations which we did and the work which we did behind every presentation. And then I realized, okay, interacting with people was much more nice and fun than with those big network elements. And then I decided to shift to training. And that is when I did my uh, MBA in HR and training from Symbiosis. And I got into training, and it was my mentor who told me that I started every session with a story, and the session was really beautiful. The connect was nice. After all, stories do their magic. I used to tell stories in the beginning because I was very, very scared. So, to find my feet and to just settle down, I used to tell a story whenever I started a session. But the impact was huge, which I didn't realize back then. And it was my mentor who told me that the stories with which I started the sessions were really very nice, and the connect was beautiful. And then I somehow started looking out for places where I could learn more about storytelling. And that's when I found Kathalaya, and I did my course from Kathalaya. Around the same time, my daughter happened, and there was another baby which was born around the same time, the balcony opposite to our house. So, sitting here in this balcony, I used to read, and the baby there also used to sit and listen. I used to back then only read stories for my daughter. Sometimes, very rarely, I used to tell, but I used to get her all the picture books, and I used to show and tell and all that. So that baby used to also listen. And then I thought, okay, anyway, I'm telling for my daughter, why not call all the other babies also in the society and tell? And that is how it first started. And yes, been telling stories since then, 2012, 13. And then, like, I decided to take it to like professionally going to places or libraries. I think I started around 2015. That's when I started going out and telling stories. Yes, and it's still continuing now.
Wonderful, Mangalam, wonderful. What a lovely journey. And friends, story reading and storytelling are two different things. A storyteller doesn't read from a book, but knows the story and then shares the story to connect. So there is an instinct connect happening because eye to eye, heart to heart. So while reading, you may not be looking at your listener, you may be looking at your book. Wonderful, Mangalam. What a lovely journey that transformed you, and you decided to connect with people through stories. And stories can connect, can definitely weave their magic. And I believe it's the magic potion, the magic elixir of this century, and maybe for time to come as well. Because stories are the way we are, and like you mentioned, there are a cushion of stories that you can sit back and rest, and one of them will pop up and give you that solution for that problem that you're facing. Wonderful, Mangalam. That's excellent. Can you tell us a little bit more about your forays into the storytelling festivals? You connect. I remember both of us sharing the platform at the National Storytelling Network Festival in 2020, and that time too, you shared a wonderful story from Ramayana, if I'm not mistaken. Uh,
Yes.
right. So
Yeah.
I guess Ramayana is an epic very close to your heart, just like for me as well. So, could you tell us about your forays into the storytelling festivals? And is there a thriving storytelling community in Coimbatore? Since you are from Coimbatore, a wonderful city from southern India.
So I moved into Coimbatore 4 years back. So back then, I was actually looking out for other tellers, and frankly, I didn't find that at that moment of time. I couldn't actually, I didn't come across anyone, though there are many of them. Thanks to the pandemic, when everything started happening online, and yes, along with the name, where the place they come from is also being put these days. And so that's how I found out that there were many tellers in Coimbatore. And yes, I slowly started connecting with each one of them. And now we're all in a WhatsApp group, though we've not met each other face to face till date. So whoever is in and around Coimbatore, in the Kongu Manad, as we say, so whoever have their roots here or whoever is here and doing stories, so I've just brought all of them under one umbrella. Yeah, I hope there's some big festival becomes possible here. And yes, this also becomes a place like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, where currently storytelling festivals are really thriving.
Wonderful. I more power to you, and I wish that you could do that, because somebody has to take the initiative, and if it is so, it be, because to bring everyone under one umbrella, to unify, and to have this regular meetups, and then eventually, which leads to a festival, is wonderful, because it's a community building exercise, isn't it? And in a
Very true.
beautiful way, through stories. I was talking to a wonderful international storyteller, and he said, "This is Sunday evening, Usha. My friends are joining me, and at 7, we will light the fire, sit around, we'll play music, and share stories." And I thought it was so wonderful. And it happens
Beautiful.
every Sunday. It's been happening for years. So, if you could do in a wonderful uh, city across the oceans, why can't we too? Maybe not light a fire, but at least we can gather around and share stories.
True.
That's wonderful, Mangalam. Can you tell us about the current project or work that you're working, and also your stint in schools? You've been a storyteller in residence, and your organization, which you set up recently, or you've kind of coined a name for your organization.
Yes. So I tell stories under the banner of KathaKuteeram. KathaKuteeram meaning story cottage, and I designed the logo. It was in 2016 that I launched it, if I could say that. Yes. And the logo has the sun, there's water, there's cloud, there is air. So I just wanted to say that as long as the five elements are there, the fire, earth, ether, or sky, water is there, stories are here to stay. So all the five elements are there in the logo in different forms. So KathaKuteeram, when it's written in Sanskrit, there is a on top. So that is what I've converted into the sun. And so there is the cottage, there's a house and smoke coming out, there are clouds, there is a listener with tears in her eyes, so that's the water. So all the five elements I've tried to bring in, to say that as long as all these are there, stories will remain and stories will be transported from place to place. So that's how, that's what I had in my mind when I designed the logo. I gave it a very crude form, and an artist illustrator actually refined it and gave it colors. So that's how
Wonderful.
my logo came
What a
up.
beautiful explanation, and how well you have explained. The elements are always there to stay. And, as long as the elements are there, stories are alive. Beautiful, beautiful. Kadai Kutiram. Beautiful. Katha Kutiram, right?
Yeah.
Katha Kutiram. Lovely. I also saw that, Mangalam, that you also do you speak Sanskrit? Do you tell stories in Malayalam? You do. How about this? Because have you grown up in Kerala, or have you learned Malayalam, or do you speak Malayalam?
Okay. I was born, brought up, and I did my education in Kerala. I'm from Kerala. So that's how I know Malayalam. I learned Sanskrit in school, so though not a very fluent speaker, but I can manage to write sentences and I can do a story. Tamil is my mother tongue. And yes, Hindi, thanks to all the movies which I watched. So that's how I picked up these languages.
Lovely. So, Mangalam, can you share with us another story?
Yes, sure. Okay, so this is a story from the state where I'm currently in. It's from Tamil Nadu, from the district called Shivagangai. Shivagangai, the district, had a huge temple of Lord Shiva. It was the Kalayar temple. The kings who were ruling the place were the Marudu brothers. There were two of them, the elder one and the younger one, the Periya Marudu and the Chinna Marudu. So the Marudu brothers, they decided that the huge temple, which was the pride of their kingdom, should have a chariot, and there should be a chariot festival. So it was decided that the chariot had to be done, and then they started inquiring about who was the best artisan, the carpenter who could give them the most beautiful, the most majestic chariot which they had in their mind. And many ministers and many citizens of the country, all of them shared one name. He was the Kuppamutta Asari, the carpenter, the artisan who was very experienced, who was very old, very knowledgeable. And if the temple's chariot had to be done, it had to be done by Kuppamutta Asari only. So it was decided that Kuppamutta Asari was the one who would be making the chariot for the temple. He was immediately summoned and he came to the king's court. And the Periya Marudu, the elder of the brothers who was sitting on the throne, he said, Kuppamutta Asari, I want you to make a beautiful chariot for the temple and add to the pride of the temple. And you have time till Thai Masam. Thai Masam is the mid of January. So you have close to 8-9 months. I think that would be enough for you. And Kuppamutta Asari was filled with pride, with joy. What a beautiful responsibility he had got. How many would get the task of doing a chariot for the big temple? He was elated. With folded hands, he said, Asan, I would definitely do the best I can. Thank you very much. And Kuppamutta Asari went home. And as was the tradition, he made the Ganesha statue. As he was completing the Ganesha statue and giving the final touches, the trunk got a crack. Now, Kuppamutta Asari, the next day he went back to the court and he said, Manna, I request you to pay all the laborers who are working under me. Give me the money so that I can pay all the laborers who are working under me. But do not pay me, Manna. My dear king, you will pay me on the day the chariot is taken out for its first ride. And that day you will give me my dakshina. Can you please assure this to me? And the king said, Oh, yes, sure. I will right away pay for all the laborers and for all the material that is needed for the chariot. And for you, I promise I will give your money, your dakshina, on the day the chariot first is taken out. Thank you, my king. Thank you. And Kupamutasari went. The big juniper trees were felled, and work began in all earnestness. And the chariot, the beautiful, magnificent, huge, colorful chariot started taking shape. Slowly and steadily, the work got over. And it was the month of Thai when the chariot had to be taken out on the streets around the temple. The chariot was brought and stationed in the shed, and now beautiful flower garlands were hung all around the chariot. It looked so huge. People marveled looking at it. They were happy that their temple had got such a beautiful chariot. After all, Kupamutasari was no ordinary man. His years of experience, his expertise in the job, and his knowledge of all worldly things, and his immense mental strength were all reflected in that beautiful chariot which was there. Color papers, beautiful color garlands were all used, and decorated stood that big chariot. The Lord's idol was brought, beautifully decked up in silk cloth and flower garlands, and placed inside the chariot first. And then the elder Marudu brother, Periya Marudu, got into the chariot, touching it with great reverence. He got into the chariot and he sat. The sound there was just deafening. People were all shouting. They were all excited. The chariot was now going to be pulled into the streets. The beat of the drums were reverberating in the air. There was joy and happiness all around. Now, Kupamutasari, he had placed a small wedge under one of the wheels of the chariot, and he rushed to do the sacrificial puja, which is always done in all the temples before the chariot is brought out to the streets. So people now saw the Lord's deity, and behind that their king was sitting, and the drum beats and the trumpets were blowing, and they all held the rope, and Ailesa, Ailesa, Ailesa. But did the chariot budge from its place? It did not budge one bit. That is when someone in the crowd said, "Oh, Kupamutasari has not been given his dakshina. He has not been paid his wages. That's why the chariot is not moving." And that's when the king remembered, and he ushered Kupamutasari to be summoned immediately. Kupamutasari, knowing very well that he would be called, was just waiting there after finishing the sacrificial puja. He was one among the crowd, and he came forward and he stood there with folded hands in front of the king. And the king from the chariot, he said, "Kupamutasari, what a beautiful, magnificent chariot you've made. What do you want as your dakshina? Tell what you want. That will be your fees. Ask what you want and it will be given." The king said that in front of tens of thousands of people. And Kupamutasari was waiting for this moment. He said, "Manna, Manna, don't hesitate. Ask and it shall be given to you." Manna, ask. Manna, I want your crown, your sword and scepter. I want to be the king for uh, uh, today. I want to sit there and ride the chariot manna. No sooner as had he not finished, the younger brother got very angry and he told, "How dare you say that to our beloved king? Look at your audacity." But the elder Maradu brother, Periya Maradu, was calm, as cool as a cucumber. He got down from the chariot. He stopped his younger brother. The crowd were all watching, aghast. He told everyone to calm down, and he took out the crown from his head and placed it on Kupamuttasari's head. The excitement in the crowd came to a halt. The chit-chatting in the crowd had stopped. You could have heard a pin drop. The drums had long before stopped beating. The trumpets were removed from their mouths, and people were just looking at how the events were turning out to be. Then next, Periyamaradu took out his sword and gave it to Kupamuttasari. He then gave his scepter too, and he said, "Yes, Kupamuttasari, you are the king for today, and you will be in the chariot today as the chariot sets out for its first ride on the streets." And Kupamuttasari went and sat behind the idol in the chariot. Now, Periyamaradu was also a citizen now. He looked around. He saw that the people had left their hold on the rope of the chariot. The drums had stopped beating. "Start the drums," he said. People still looked at him as the king, and the drum beats started, and the trumpets began blowing, and he said, "Pull the chariot." And he also held the rope, and they all pulled the chariot. The people were not very happy. Where was their Periyamaradu as the king? What a lovable, just, loyal, brave, kind king he was, who did everything for his people. And who is this fellow? He just made a chariot and he wishes to be the king for one day. Cha! People had all these thoughts running in their mind, but now here were the two Maradu brothers themselves pulling the chariot, so they also had to follow suit, and they all pulled the chariot. And the chariot was coming, and there was a turn on the road, and there was a stone there, not a small one, a big one indeed, and the wheel of the chariot tripped over that, and from the chariot fell down Kupamuttasari, and the wheel from behind went over him. Periyamaradu left the chariot rope and he ran towards Kupamuttasari and he put him on his lap and he said, "Couldn't you have sat carefully? You wish to be king for just one day and it has just been half an hour. And look at you in a... Oh, call the royal physician immediately." And Kupamuttasari looked at the king, Periyamaradu, and he said, "Please do not call the king. Let me die." "What? I can't let you die. The knowledge that you have, your experience, it is all in safe hands. Now please listen to me. I have to die today." "What are you saying?" "The day I accepted to do the chariot, I went home and, as per the tradition, made the Ganesha statue first. The trunk got a crack and later broke. It is not a good sign. I took out my shells and placed them in a formation in front of me. I sat in deep meditation, and that is when I knew what it meant. It clearly told me that the king who rides on the chariot, on the first day the chariot comes on to the streets, will meet his end on the same day. My dear Manna, what a great king you are. You are so good to all the people here, all the animals, every bird, every insect, every animal, every person here loves you. How can I, knowing this fact, let you die? That is why I said I wanted to be king for today. If you save me, then might be when you get onto the chariot, something might happen to you. So please don't save me. Allow me to die as the king. I have the royal crown, the royal sword, and the scepter with me, which means I am the king. And today is the first day the chariot has come onto the streets. So let that happen. Please let me die. And after a while, Kupamutasari died in the lap of Periyamaruthu. It took a while for the people to understand the magnitude of the sacrifice Kupamutasari had done. And the king placed a statue of him in front of the temple. Even today, in the Kalayar temple, stands the statue of Kupamutasari with folded hands praying to the Lord. This is another story which is very, very close to my heart. Sometimes things happen and we keep asking ourselves, why? Why is it happening? I don't understand the reason. But then my mother keeps on telling me, everything happens for a reason. Sometimes you see the reason, you understand why it's happening that way. And in many, many, many other situations, you don't see the reason behind why some things are happening. Everything has a reason for it to happen. This is a thing which my mother kept always telling me. Everything happens for a reason. Sometimes you know what the reason is, and it's easier for you to accept. Sometimes you do not know, and then it becomes difficult for you to accept why it is happening. But when you realize it happens for a reason, even if you know or you do not know, just accept, acknowledge, and go with the flow. So, this is another story which is very, very close to my heart. And it keeps reminding me sometimes what you see in front of your eyes is not the whole picture. Something is happening even behind the scenes, behind the screens.
Wonderful, wonderful, Mangalam. What a lovely story. What a beautiful folk tale. Another gem, another gem from India. And, stories help us to navigate through the difficult situations in life. And listening to this story, I'm sure, will help many of our listeners. Like I said, stories are therapeutic, stories are healing, stories show us the way forward.
Very true.
So
Very, very.
yes, and thank you for sharing two gems, Mangalam. And the storytellers, cafes, USP is to listen to stories, so that when it was set up in the pandemic, the idea was to how one can forget all the troubles and transport ourselves into the magical land of stories. But the stories that came out through Storytellers Cafe have helped people to navigate through these difficult times. Thank you so much, Mangalam. It was wonderful to listen to your expressions, your voice overs, and your impersonation of the Manna, the king, and the two brothers, as well as the priest. What did you call him? Because sometimes my Tamil is not up to the mark.
Asari. He was the carpenter or the artisan who did the chariot.
Carpenter, right. Beautiful, beautiful. And friends, you can follow Mangalam on her social media handles, which we will be, um, writing. And so that, and also her email, you can get in touch, and other handles, and reach out to Mangalam and listen to her wonderful stories and connect with her. That is the idea. This gives a platform for storytellers so that globally the diaspora can see you and connect with you if they so wish. Thank you so much, Mangalam, for gracing our studios and sharing with us two wonderful gems. Any last words that you would like to part with?
Absolutely, my pleasure being here. Thank you for having me here at Storytellers Cafe Osha. It was a pleasure actually sharing the two stories, which are like very, I mean, from the many numbers, these two stories which are very close to my heart. Yes, each time I tell a story, the story tells me something, is what I feel. The stories talk to us and they tell us
Absolutely.
something.
Yes.
So, stories which we carry actually are the ones which influence our life, which influence the decisions that we take. They are the lens through which we actually see the world and we decide everything. So, I grew up listening to a lot of stories from my mother and my maternal grandfather. So those stories are, my maternal grandfather used to share more of personal stories, his personal experiences and how he overcame situations in life. My mother used to tell me the stories from the epics, the Upanishads, the Puranas. So another story, I mean, during the Margali month, when my mother teaches me kolams, and when I'm practicing the kolams, she tells me stories.
Wow.
So uh, I mean, God wants, so there was this one day when she was telling me, God wants only your true love and affection, nothing else. So, I mean, there was a time when in school when I used to tell God, if I pass in maths, I will give you one coconut. If I pass in social and history, I will give you two coconuts. So she, I mean, only devotion to God is needed. I mean, you have to just love God. For that, she told me a story. Actually, even now in Sri Rangam, it stands witness to that. When Alauddin Khulji's forces came down and attacked Sri Rangam, and they took the Utsav or the idol back to Suratani, their princess. She loved the idol and she didn't allow it to be melted. So she played with it, and when she gave birth to it, she fed it, and she played with the doll, and all the while she fell in love with the Lord Mahavishnu himself. And when the idol was being taken away from her, it is said that like she came all the way from Delhi and she came to Sri Rangam and she stood in the steps in front of the temple and she said, Lord, don't you see my love towards you? Don't you see my affection towards? And it is said that she just merged into the idol. And so even now, so among the Nachiyars, Tulka Nachiyar holds a place too. And the Nevedyam is roti, butter, and sugar, which is still done in the Sri Rangam temple. So yeah, so my mother keeps telling me stories for everything. And
Wonderful, Mangalam. It's evident clearly that you have so many bag full of stories, unheard of stories, and which are gems. Something this I've never heard about the Sri Rangam temple. Just because I haven't heard doesn't mean others haven't, and it's
very true.
wonderful. And I can see that you're a natural storyteller. So continue doing what you do best. And it's wonderful to have had you as a guest on Storytellers Cafe. And we wish you all the best in your future endeavors and your future projects. And so, listeners, please do drop in your comments. We love to hear from you. My guest tonight is Mangalam Senthil from Coimbatore, India. She shared wonderful two stories. One is a classic from the Ramayana, and one a wonderful folk tale from southern India. So that's it for now, and I will see you next week, same time, same place. And as we all know, India celebrates the 75th year of independence. So I will see you yet again with another guest, and let's celebrate India's Independence Day listening to stories on Storytellers Cafe. Thank you and have a
Thank
great
you.
evening.
Happy
Thank
stories to all of you.
Yes. Thank you, Mangalam. A privilege and an honor to have you. And we wish you all the best and see you guys soon next week.